Hello everyone, I'm That Tech Guy. Virtualization, you may have heard about it, but what exactly is it? How can you virtualize something that's already virtual? Well, today I'd like to talk about how you can virtualize another operating system on top of your currently existing operating system. So we'll go through different terms like the host operating system and the guest operating system, and by the end of this tutorial, hopefully you will be able to run another system on top of your current one. So let's get started. Now, before we begin, we need to talk a little bit about virtualization. What is virtualization? Well, first of all, virtualization is where we take our main operating system, so say we're using Windows, maybe we could be using Mac OS, even Linux like Ubuntu, and we run another operating system on top of it. Sounds cool, right? Well, it can be, and it's quite useful. So in today's example, I'm going to take my Windows 8 host, the main operating system that I have running on one of my laptops. And on top of that, I'm going to virtualize Ubuntu. And we're going to use a program. I've already done a video on how to virtualize within Virtualbox. And if you're interested in that, check my channel. It's there. I virtualized Ubuntu 14.4. And I also have one where I virtualize Windows on top of Ubuntu. So no matter which way you're coming at it, I've got videos that cover that. But today I'm going to use a different program. Today I'm going to use a program called Vmware Player. Now, both Vmware Player and Virtualbox, they both virtualize things, and they're quite good at it. Both are very capable. However, they're both a little different, and they're both quite good. I like using both of them, and so I'm going to use that today, and then I have Virtualbox on my other video, so I suggest you try them both out and see which one you like better. I like VMware Player for things that are a little more graphics intensive, because VMware Player can directly grab a hold of the graphics card and bring that straight into it. So it's a little better when it comes to heavier graphics, but I like Virtualbox because running multiple instances, it's just the process is a little smoother. And setting it up, it's, in my opinion, it's a little smoother than VMware Player. But as each new version comes out, it just gets better and better all the time. So I suggest they're both free, and I have the links to download them in my video descriptions, the VMware Player for this one and the Virtualbox in my Virtualbox video. So just try them both out. Now, one of the main reasons for virtualization for beginners like this video, for me at least, is to try out a new operating system. So, like I said, in this example, I'm going to take Windows 8. I'm currently running 8.1, and I'm going to take Ubuntu 15.4, and I'm going to virtualize that within VMware Player. And one of the cool things about this is I can try out this version of Ubuntu and see if I like it without actually having to make any changes to my PC whatsoever. So it's kind of like a little sandbox to play in. And of course I could always just take the Ubuntu 15.4 ISO and I could burn it to a USB drive or a CD, and I could just boot straight into live media like that. That's a little more complex. It's not hard, but it takes a little bit more time. And to go back into Windows, I have to restart again. So I'll be able to do all of this without having to restart my computer a single time. And I like it for that aspect. Keeps things a little more simple. And I don't need the whole PC to test drive this. I don't need all my memory allocated to it and all that. So this is a good way to test out a Linux distro before you actually install it. So it's good for that reason. There are other reasons. Developers like to use it because, like I said, it kind of sandboxes everything. And it allows you to try things out without damaging or making permanent changes to your computer. So with that said, those are some of my reasons for why you should virtualize. The biggest one is to just, why not? Because it's fun to tinker, and it's fun to learn and try new things. And again, those who think you might want to go to an operating system but aren't quite sure, this is a good way to kind of get your toes wet a bit. So, without any further ado, let's head on over to the computer and let's get started with downloading VMware Player. Okay, now we're within the desktop, so the first thing that we're going to want to use is, as I mentioned before, we're going to be using a program called Vmware Player, which is similar to Virtualbox if you've seen my video on how to use that one to virtualize operating systems. But like I said earlier, it's a little different as well. And I think that both work quite well. I like using both. But when it comes to more graphics heavy stuff, I like VMware Player. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to go to our internet browser, and within Google just type in VMware Player, and the site that you're going to want to go to is going to be the second one, the download My Vmware. So the address is my.vmware.com, so that's the one that you want to go to, not the first one. Go to the second one. And then once on this page, you simply need to scroll all the way down of this list. It's going to be the very last one, the VMware Player right here, and click on Download Product. And then choose your host operating system. Now this is different from your guest operating system. So even though we're going to virtualize Linux, because we're hosting on Windows, we want the Windows bit version, 64-bit version. Since I have a 64-bit operating system, most newer computers that are at least 5 years old, they're going to have the 64-bit. If you're unsure, if you have an older computer, you'll want to check that out before you download. So once that's done, just simply click on download, and it shouldn't take too long. So I'll just save it in my downloads folder so that's easy to find, and it's just going to take 2 minutes. So we'll let that finish up. Okay, now that that's finished downloading, just click on the icon down here, and that will run the setup application. So let that open up. Click yes for the security prompt, and we can just go ahead and close out of here. And the setup for VMware Player is pretty straightforward. You just want to accept the license terms and just click through all the prompts. I don't really want mine checking for updates every time it starts. I feel like that kind of slows it down. I do want a desktop shortcut. So you see, it's your typical setup. It's very basic. Nothing too complicated, and of course you can do yours. You can install yours to a different location if you wish. I just like to keep it easy. While we're waiting for this to install, it shouldn't take long. 2 to 3 minutes. As you can see, it's almost done. But while we're waiting for this to install, of course, I'm going to be virtualizing Ubuntu today. Particularly Ubuntu Gnome version 15.4, or I guess it's Gnome. Different people pronounce it differently. But if you don't have it already, you need to download the ISO. So while you're waiting, if you want to go ahead and download it, depending on what version you want, if you want Ubuntu with Unity or with GNOME, or if you want to try something different like Linux Mint or Fedora, whatever it is you're wanting to virtualize, you need to just download that. For example, if you want Ubuntu, you'll just head on over to their webpage, and it should be the first one that comes up, ubuntu.com. From here, you'll click on Desktop and download Ubuntu. And then choose which one you want, either 64-bit or 32-bit, and download. Now most ISOs, your average ISOs like Ubuntu and Fedora and Mint, they're about a gigabyte large. So depending on your internet connection, it could take a while to download. For me, it takes between 20 and 30 minutes on a slow day. If I'm lucky, I can usually download them in 10 or 15. So just depending on how fast your internet currently is, determines how long it will take you to download. But you'll need that. You'll need the ISO before you can move on to the next step of VMware Player. So now's a good time to do that if you don't already have one. Okay, and it's done installing. So just click finish, and it should start right up, maybe. If it doesn't, just click on the icon. So I'm just going to go ahead and type mine in. Click continue once you put in your email. And finish. Okay, so now we have it completely installed. And to begin with our virtualization of Linux, the first thing that we want to do is click on create a new virtual machine. And because I'm using an ISO that I downloaded from their website, I'm going to select the second option, installer disk image file, or ISO, and then browse to the location of my file. I currently have it saved to the desktop, and there it is, Ubuntu Gnome 15.4. So we'll open that, and next. And you can choose to personalize it if you want. We'll just go ahead and type that. And it looks like it wants a password, so we'll go ahead and use a password. And next. Okay, your username has to be lowercase. I should have already known that. Next, and that's fine. You can name it whatever you want. And then on this page where you specify the disk capacity, you're choosing how big you want your virtual hard drive to be. So say your computer has a terabyte hard drive. Well, your computer has 1,000 gigabytes for its hard drive. It's the same concept here. You can really think of this as its own computer, this virtual machine. So you can give it however much you want. If you have 2 terabytes and want to give your virtual machine a terabyte, then do that. If you're just doing this to kind of play around with it and get a feel for the operating system, you probably don't need quite as much. So for me, I'm just going to leave it as a default, and you can always delete these files later if you decide you don't want them, and it gets added back to your hard drive. So you're not going to lose anything if you set it to 50 and decide you don't want to keep it at 50 and you just want to recreate it to a smaller number like 25. That's fine. You just delete the file. So make it whatever you want. Don't worry about losing anything. And I personally prefer storing my virtual disk as a single file. It makes it run a little bit faster, and it's a bit cleaner in my opinion, a bit more organized. And then the next page will tell you all the specifications of your virtual machine or virtual computer. Make sure everything's right, and if it looks good, go ahead and unclick power on this virtual machine after creation, because we might want to take a look at a few other settings. So click finish, and then it's going to format the hard drive for that machine. Doesn't take long. As you can see, it went quite fast. And I just want to take a look at the settings here before we fire it up. So we can see everything's kind of minimal right now, the very bare bones basics. And so I want to give it a little bit more. On this laptop that I'm running, I have about 8 gigabytes of memory. Ubuntu doesn't really need a whole lot of memory to run smoothly, but I like to give it a little bit of a cushion. So about half is what I'm going to give this machine. And then I'm going to give it 1 extra processor, since I have 4. So, okay, my hard drive is right. Everything looks correct. And we have our ISO all set up. So everything looks good. Click on options. And everything looks right. So I don't think we need to change anything currently. Later on, if you decide you want to share folders between your virtual machine and your host machine, you can do so here on the Shared Folders tab. Just click on Always Enabled and browse to the folder you want to share. For example, if I wanted to share Hearthstone, I would browse to that folder, and then you'll be able to access those files through your virtual machine. Word of caution though, it can go both ways with the sharing folder, so you can add a file from your host machine to the shared folder and send it to your virtual machine, and vice versa. And there is a potential to get viruses if you make a mistake and share the wrong kinds of things, go to the wrong kind of website. So keep that in mind. Be sure what you're sharing. Make sure you restrict only to what you want to share, and just keep your eyes open, and as always, just common sense really. But this is where you would go if you want to share folders, and it's a very simple process. You add and remove and so on. So everything else looks okay. So I think we are ready to fire it up. Okay, after adjusting the settings, we are now ready to start our virtual machine. So just come on down here to where it says Play Virtual Machine and click on that, and it will fire up. You can just hit OK on this prompt. And OK. Now, the VMware tools for Linux is something that you're going to want to have as you play around with it, because it will enable you to get the full experience out of VMware Player, and it will give you better control over the operating system. So I highly recommend that you download the VMware Player tools. You can even do it right now. It doesn't take too long. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on download and install and let that run. And depending on, again, this all depends on your internet connection, but depending on how fast it is, this could take a couple of minutes, it could take 10 minutes. So now's a good time to go get you a cup of coffee or to make a sandwich as you wait for this. So I'm going to go ahead and just pause it, and I'll be right back when it finishes. Okay, so the VMware Player Tools extension pack has finished installing, so we can now proceed. This will prompt up just about every time you start up, unless you click, of course, don't show this hint anymore. It shows you a list of the currently available devices that VMware Player can capture. So of course I'm using a headset for the video, and I have a webcam, and then this is a touch screen, of course, and of course the microphone for my webcam. So depending on what you have, your list will be different from mine, depending on what kind of devices VMware Player can capture. So it's just a handy little list. It's not something I really need prompting every single time, so we'll uncheck that and click OK. And as you can see, because we did the easy install through VMware Player, it's already been installing in the background. We haven't had to touch a single thing, which is a nice feature. And I can't remember if that's in the newer versions of Virtualbox or not. I'll have to go back and check, because it's been a while since I've installed anything through Virtualbox. Virtualbox may or may not have that kind of easy install, but still, with modern distros like Ubuntu and Mint and Fedora and such, the installation process is pretty simple anyways. And if you want to do it manually and you're curious on how to do that, you can check out my video on installing Ubuntu 14.4 within Virtualbox on a Windows host. That's one of my earlier videos, and then that one I go through the whole process of how to install Ubuntu. It's the same process whether you install it on a virtual machine or if you install it through a live CD onto your computer. The steps are the same. So if you want those full steps, I highly encourage you to check that video out. So installing Ubuntu like this in Gnome can take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes depending on the speed of your computer, the speed of your virtual machine, and exactly how you set it up. So, but it looks like it's been poking along. It's towards the end, so I would imagine it's not going to be too much longer before it finishes. So I'll just go ahead and pause it here, and we'll come back when it's done. One other thing that I wanted to mention as we're waiting for this to install is that for those of you who are new to virtualization, you remember back at the beginning of these steps, we assigned a number of processors to our virtual machine. And that's going to vary depending on what kind of computer you're using and the number of processors that this computer has and the types of processors that you're running with. And so if you don't know, it's always good to just head on over to your computer. In fact, I'll show you. Whether you're using Windows 8 or Windows 7 or whatever, if you just open up your file browser and come on over to this PC or my computer, depending on which version of Windows you're using, right click and click on Properties. And this page that opens up will list some of the information about your computer. So as you can see at the top, I'm running Windows 8.1 Pro. I have an Intel Core i7 processor at 1.80 gigahertz. I have 8 gigs of memory, and 7.45 of that is usable because the system automatically takes a portion of that upon installation. And here you can see that I'm running a 64-bit operating system with 64-bit based processors. So if you're unsure, this is where you can come to see whether you're using a 64-bit or 32-bit system. And then of course I also have the touch screen. It'll tell you the name of your computer and what work group you're belonging to. So this is where you can come to find out some of that basic information if you're unsure of the specs that you're currently running. And you can take these and then decide how you want to set up your virtual machine. So if you find that while you're running your virtual machine, if you find your computer bottlenecking or just acting a lot slower than usual, well, you may want to go back into your virtual machine settings, cut back on the number of processors, and cut back on the memory that you're giving it. And that may help you run a little bit faster and a little smoother. So depending on what kind of computer you're using, you're going to have to tweak it accordingly. So just keep that in mind as you go through virtualizing, and don't worry if it doesn't work the first or second time. Just go back and keep making those adjustments until you get it right, and just stick at it and good things will happen. So as you can see, our Ubuntu Gnome has finished installing, and because we did the easy install through Vmware Player, we already have a username, it already has a password, so everything should be virtually set up, to say. And actually this is the first time that I have ever used the easy install because I've always done it manually, so this is a first for me, and so far I like it. It involved a lot less guiding on my part, so hopefully this works pretty good. So we'll just type in my password and see how it turned out. So here you have your Ubuntu Gnome, and from here you can treat it just like you would a normal desktop, which is pretty cool because those of you who've never virtualized, you can see we're running 2 operating systems at once. And if you have a powerful enough computer, you can run 2, 3, 4. It's really only limited by how much memory you can get and what kind of processes you have. So this is our Ubuntu, and the first thing that I like to do before anything else is I like to give it a nice background, because the default one doesn't usually suit my taste. So we have both a background and a lock screen. I'm just going to do the background for now, and as you can see, it's running pretty snappy. It doesn't seem to be lagging too much. We'll go with the feet and select, and done. And I wonder if I can full screen this yet. No. Yes. Okay. If you try to full screen it like this, well, not full screen, but make it as large as possible, maximize. If it doesn't work right away, then you need to go back and reinstall the Vmware Player tools, that extension pack that it prompted at the beginning. So if you have any problems with that, that's why you need to make sure that's installed and patched to the latest version. So we have our activities panel, which if we press our super key, it opens up. Of course, it wants to update the software since it's a brand new install. I'm not going to do that quite yet, so we'll close that. And okay, we're connected. VMware Player will automatically, by default, patch your wireless connection to your virtual machine, making it appear as an Ethernet connection. And so the internet will already just automatically share between the two. So you really shouldn't have to make any changes unless you want to do advanced configurations. So that's all good to go, and it should also be able to grab your Bluetooth adapter if you so choose. VMware Player is really good. Virtualbox is good with that too, but I like VMware Player a little better in that aspect because I feel like it's a bit cleaner in the way it grabs your devices, and it just feels a lot more automated, which in this case for me is a good thing because the less I have to do directly, for me, the better. So SuperKey brings up our activities panel. Of course, we have Firefox and Evolution. Empathy is kind of going out. You used to be able to connect it to Facebook Messenger and chat that way, but as of a couple months ago, that's no longer possible. And for a lot of people, that was the main use for empathy. So you may not be getting a whole lot out of that anymore. And future versions may no longer include empathy with it. We'll just have to wait and see. Rhythmbox, which is a music player, kind of like iTunes and Windows Media Player. So if you have any music in your folders, you can play it through this. And in my opinion, it works pretty good. It's just a very basic player. Of course, Shotwell for viewing your photos. LibreOffice, which is kind of like Microsoft Word. It's a good text editor, and it will get the job done. It's very basic, very practical. Not as many flashy effects as you can get with Office, but if you just need to write like papers for school, then this is beyond perfect. So, and then Files, which is like your Windows File Explorer. So, and then of course, those of you who are familiar with Linux distributions, you know that you can change, you can customize pretty much any aspect of Linux. And GNOME is quite good for that. You can change the icon type, the Explorer window file manager background, and so on. It's very customizable. So this is pretty much it. And then you can view all your applications, and you have help down here as well. So this is running Ubuntu Gnome on top of Windows 8. And as you can see, we're not really having any lag issues. All my keys seem to be working fine. Everything looks like it checks out, and I should be able to connect to the internet through Firefox. So let's just give that a try and see if it works. The first time that you start up Firefox, it will probably take a few seconds as it initializes for the very first time. So if I just go here to Google, and let's say, well, if I come up here to the top, let's see if I can pull my website up. And there we go. So the internet works just fine. As you saw, I didn't have to configure any. It patched in automatically, and it's fast. The whole virtualized machine is just fast. It's not as slow as it used to be with older versions of Virtualbox and VMware Player. And every new version, I'm finding that it just seems to be getting better and better. So overall, I'm pleased with it. And as you saw, it's a very simple, straight process. So once we're done, we can just power down, and the virtual machine will shut down. And the next time that you want to run it, simply open up VMware Player and click on your machine that you created and just play it. Any changes that you make inside the virtual machine, any documents you save, any pictures you have stored, whatever, it will all appear the next time you sign in. It's just like a normal computer. And depending on how much hard drive space you gave it, you can save a good number of files. So I encourage you to just try this out. If you've never virtualized before, then this is a great way to get started. If you have never ever virtualized before, I recommend start off with one of the more beginner-friendly versions of Linux. I would recommend Ubuntu or Linux Mint. I personally like Ubuntu, the best for beginners. And then as you advance, you can move on to other distros. You have Fedora, you have Manjaro, Arch Linux. There's about 250 plus and counting distributions out there because it's open source. So everybody is free to make their own distribution and pass it off to others. So I highly encourage you to give this a try. It's, if nothing else, just for the fun of it, because it's pretty cool to say that you can run 2 operating systems at once. And it's a great way to get your hands on to a new flavor of Linux, a new version of Windows. Back when the Windows 10 technical preview was available, I signed up and I ran a version of that virtualized to try it out. So it's just great for that kind of thing. And as you go on, you may find even more uses for it to fit your daily practical needs. So I encourage you to give this a try and just follow this guide. It's very easy, very basic, and just follow the steps that I did. If you have any problems, then please comment below and I will try to get back with you and work you through the steps. And just let me know how this works out for you. Any issues you faced, any cool practical uses you found, maybe a step that I did differently and you think there's a better way to do it, whatever, just comment below and join the discussion. And thank you for watching. As I said earlier, I have, for those of you who want to go through the whole steps of virtualizing Ubuntu and the whole setup process for whether you're going to virtualize or install it on a computer, I have a video, Ubuntu 14.4 virtualized on top of Windows 7. And I have a video on that, so be sure to check that out and let me know how it works out for you. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then please like and subscribe to my channel and let me know how it goes for you.